set?
Yep.
Okay, we can start with citizens' comments. Nothing for you?
I don't think so.
Okay. We were expecting others, but apparently they decided not to come.
Okay.
Or they may.
Oh, unfortunately, if they come in, we'll give them the benefit and we'll go back.
Accommodate them, yeah.
So let's go to Trio, subscription. Does it make sense? Do we have any alternatives, QuickBooks, outsourcing, account services? And I know that this has been a ongoing issue, whether it's financial, whether it's the difficulty of keeping up, the training, and we've been having some conversation with, even if the term limits on us, whether we get, shortened in our terms and we get voted out, then you gotta train all over again and so forth and so forth. So it's been a big question on how we're gonna, whether we're gonna continue with it or whether we wanna explore something else. And I think that's the discussion. Is that fair?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Absolutely.
So, alternatives, the first one, Denise just came to me and the West Forks is, they're getting something new. And she was pretty excited about it, whether it was, and I don't know if it was QuickBooks, it's not my lingo, so I wasn't sure. So I don't know what they're getting, but it's gonna be more of a computer based, not so much a pen and paper as what, Lloyd does. So they'll be, moving into the next century, if you will, but not Trio. So, you have some concerns that you'd like to share as?
Well, I totally agree with you on your position in terms of us, and the turnover and the amount of time and money that it takes to train us. Case in point, with the reconciliation, I still haven't heard back from Karen. So we're years behind our reconciliation, and I can kind of stumble through part of it, but I don't know how to wrap up the numbers, and so I agree on that. I did talk to her about it, and she said that it is not and I don't know what the term is, because it's really not my lingo either. It's a term that means that you can be 100% accountable when you use Trio, and QuickBooks is not that type of a software. I don't know what they're getting in the West Forks, but she said it would be a step backwards. Again, she may be speaking from the perspective of the ease in which it is for R.H.R. Smith to audit us. I don't know. I just know that this needs to be discussed, and Charlie has had a conversation with an outfit in Lewiston, and would you like to share that?
Yeah, so what happened was when Karen was here last time, she mentioned about, a payroll service, and that's one of the most common types of financial, services that are outsourced. It's financial, it's pretty common. Do you guys outsource your payroll?
We always,
Okay.
we always have, and
So,
I would, the fines, the penalties you pay for a late filing of quarterly reports far exceeds any charge that they charge you for payroll, in my opinion.
well, I don't perceive right now, that's an area that we, are weak in, okay? I think of all of the financial operations, at least as far as I know, we're doing pretty well with that right now. It seems to have been stabilized. After Denise got in and made some, got some understandings about these estimates, and they weren't really the true amounts, and I think she sorted that all out. I don't see that as a real hot spot. But the accounts payable, the budgeting process, the reconciliations, we're a little bit ahead of where we were, but to be honest with you, having a treasurer there for quite a period of time, and then being back to ground zero, starting all over again, that did not help. So I got thinking about that, and I said to myself, what about farming out as much, or outsourcing as much of the financial operations as we can? Not just payroll, but as much as we can. And I reached out to Karen, took her a while to get back to me. She recommended this place called, Blue Star Accounting, I think, I'll send you the email, cause he sent me some stuff, I talked with him. And then this place in Bangor that is a big, huge outfit, runs the whole East Coast, talked with them, and they don't have the time, I don't think they have the expertise or the interest in kind of meeting our needs. This guy, Mark Roy, Blue Star Accounting out of Lewiston, this is exactly what he does. And he said, you can read it, what he does, but not only would he be able to come up here and train us in the systems, okay? And he does the reconciliations, he checks every month, he does the adjustments, he does a lot of the fine tuning. There still needs to be people on board, and again, I'm speaking more right now of accounts payable, probably payroll, because they, that money going out, as opposed to the tax collection end of it.
For data entry.
Yeah, but there still needs to be here, because there's gotta be an interface between what he does and what we have to do here. It's like, he's not gonna come up here and do the job. I'll send the email to you. The reason, that I am interested in this has to do with the fact that both Denise and Susan have been learning, they've availed themselves to education, but there's still probably, I wouldn't consider either one of them to be masters of, Trio and their use of it. My biggest concern is if either one of these folks gets voted out or decides they don't wanna do it again, we're right back to square one with somebody trying to learn Trio, who has to do all sorts of the training, it takes them months to get really up to speed, things aren't right during that time period. With this guy, what we have is consistency regardless of who is here, you know what I mean? In other words, he's doing really the kind of the bulk of the financial, and I'm not an accountant, so you can read the email about what he does and, what we would do. He charges, he says the upfront, based on what you told me, is gonna be where most of the money is. Once it gets stabilized, month to month, he doesn't do that much. He charges $150 an hour.
I think didn't he say that he does the reconciliation?
Yeah.
Whoever the treasurer is, does the AP warrant, just like we're doing now. What he does is he sort of oversees that process and makes sure that you're doing it within, recommended guidelines.
It's going under the right accounts, right
Right.
budget items and,
I think that he helps to fine tune the process, oversee it to some degree until he's then, has a comfort level, but then he does the reconciliations.
And other things, it's all in the email, which I just got, and I'll send it to you guys. It's not something that's too detailed to go into tonight. I'm just more or less, trying to introduce the concept. And I feel like right now, probably even more so in a few months, between Denise and Susan, we might, we're probably gonna be in pretty good shape. But still, what I found out from Mark is one of the reasons, and I don't know why we didn't really hear about this from RHR, for them to come in here and help us set up systems for managing our finances, and then also being our auditor, is a conflict of interest.
Yeah,
It's
you can
not
see with them.
really what
Right,
they do.
right.
And I think that they've been trying to find that fine line, between being an auditor, which is a totally objective position, and trying to help us get our systems and come up to speed, because basically, this is how you need to do it. Now they're auditing what they implemented, and I guess it's apparently,
Yeah, right.
it's a little muddy in that area, and that's what he told me, and why they probably, have perhaps offered, or our expectations of what they're going to provide RHR Smith may not be realistic and beyond what they really are capable of doing.
So Karen came a week and a half or so ago,
Mm.
2 weeks, I don't know. Anyway, she left, so she's still working on the 22-23 audit. She left with all the bank statements. She has now access to our, web version Trio. And I have no idea where we are. I've reached out, I think at least 3 times since she has been here to say, can I help? Can I do something? Where are we? We'd like to have this in the town report. I just keep on
Town meeting.
Justin, do you
reaching
have
out.
anything?
So I have a pretty good amount of experience with QuickBooks. I know that there are like more premium levels of QuickBooks that I've never touched, but from my understanding of QuickBooks, I do think it will feel like a step backwards. It might on its face seem easier to work within because it's kind of built like a user-friendly website, probably more user-friendly than Trio, but I do think we run into a ceiling pretty quickly as to what its capacity is, and then we might find ourselves paying a premium subscription service once we get committed to it to get to the whatever package level would be required to do what we needed to do. So I do like the idea of outsourcing what we can. You know, it sounds like it's, you know, I'll read the email, it sounds like it might be a hefty upfront cost, but if it's, you know, if it's a handful of hours a month just to help augment what the treasurer and tax collector are doing now and make sure that, you know, it's kind of coming behind our tracks and cleaning up like, hey, you know, just, you know, I caught this went to the wrong account, or this $4,000 is not clear where it should be placed, and, you know, that seems like it's worth it to me.
I'd like,
I gotta get off before, you guys are going back and forth, I need to
Okay.
get my train of thought, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is Trio's a struggle, and I've seen it since I've been here, and all I can see is Trio struggle. Karen has misled us, and she has misled me, because I've had a couple conversations with her about coming in and training and getting the reconciliations done, and getting the audit done, and right up until now, hearing this, that there's a conflict of interest, I was not led to believe that. I thought that was what we hired them to do, and that's why we were giving them tens of thousands of dollars. So there's number one problem for me. We're giving this RHR Smith tens of thousands of dollars to help train our people, and we're not getting the training because it's a conflict of interest, and they're just taking our money. I'm not happy with that statement at all. As far as the outsourcing part, I see a problem with the outsourcing part. One piece of that is, as a town, as a municipal, we pay a treasurer and a tax collector. If we're gonna outsource those things, the townspeople will not, in my opinion, support paying, say, $5,000 to the tax collector, $5,000 to the treasurer, and then $20,000 or $10,000 to an outsource. You know, they're gonna say, look, if you're gonna outsource it, we're not having these positions in-house. We'll outsource the whole thing. That's my opinion, and that's what I see that the argument would be if we have a town meeting, and that's where we'll have, the peoples will go with. The people are right now, financially strapped. We taxed the heck out of them last year, and everybody's talked about it. I just don't see coming to them with more, added, taxes, just to buy more, to implement, you know, an outsource, another computer program, you know what I mean? We're just asking for more and more and more. I think that what we need to do, this is my opinion, and we're still talking about the discussion alternatives in the outsource part of it, is I was impressed with Garnett's crew when he came in here. And Garnett's crew, this is a suggestion, could, if we're gonna outsource or pay somebody to come in here for training, I think we could either ask him to put us on, he could come in and train us, or train the appropriate people to get that reconciliations done, get our Trio stuff, training up to snuff, without waiting for Karen, because that's been very tough to get her motivated for this. And also, if it does come to a point, then we have a person or a company that could come in and train the next person, or if we deem that would be who I would outsource if we're gonna stick with Trio, that's who I would recommend, going with somebody to that nature.
I think, go ahead.
The comment that you made about RHR Smith, we sat here at, I don't know if it was a special meeting or at some point, we said, yes, they promised us that they would come in here and they were going to do our audits, they were going to help us through this transition period, and they've fallen short on that regard.
They've fallen short on
Everything.
everything.
So,
Am I wrong? I mean,
so
everything
I
they promised us,
totally agree with you,
except the payments.
right?
Yeah.
So I agree with that, but I think what you're kind of mixing up is the treasurer and the tax collector position are two different things.
I do.
So the tax collector, Garnet, is well-equipped
Yep.
and educated to help, but I don't think Denise needs help with the tax collection piece. She seems to have that under control. It is the, and again, payroll, it's mainly the reconciliation, cause I think that we can data entry these bills, you know, look at, there they are. It's not that difficult
I
to
was more
put in.
referencing his company as a trio trainer.
I don't think that that's his goal. He
Okay.
doesn't even
I
know
think
that we
he
use
could,
Trio.
with the tax collection portion of it. I
But
think
not the other part.
Not with the budgetary and accounts payable.
Alright,
There's a whole budgetary module that has never been used. It's referenced in the management letter, I can tell you it's still not being used. And it really helps us to figure out the assessors where we are financially at any given month.
I
And
understand.
also
Thank you for that
to
clarification.
do a better job with our budgeting for the next year.
So,
When you don't know where the money went, it's pretty hard to figure out how much more to raise.
So, what it's saying is, the treasurers are having the difficult part of getting that data into Trio and being able to write reports from it, that were,
I think that the chart of accounts has to be a non-moving target, so that if Evan had it saying that it was, you know, whatever this account number, then it has to stay, you know, it has to all make sense, so that you can, you know, put training where training goes, you put the
That's basic
CMP
accounting,
bills.
and that's basic
Yeah,
accounting.
you
right?
have to, so
So-
your chart of accounts has to be spot on, and I
that's
think.
why I'm confused why the treasurer can't, do that at the moment.
I think, I mean, I think you can, but there's so many, there's, like, I don't understand, there's, the BMV money, there's an expense account for that, and then there's a general ledger account for that. And they're, in my opinion, they're the exact same thing. Why you would use one from the expense account and not the general ledger, that I don't know, cause I'm not an accountant, and I just don't, but
It
they
seems
are
like
the
it's almost
exact
too
same
complicated.
thing. And there's the LPI fee in the expense account, and then there's another LPI fee in the general ledger, so there's a lot of duplicates. And I think that somebody that has more knowledge and understanding than I do, who could just sit down and say, use a general ledger like bank interest. When, Brenda came here, she was using general ledger to put in the bank interest. And Karen used an expense account, so I'm like, it's confusing to me.
I wonder if we could, if it's possible, if we could find a way to pull the plug on the RHR relationship, get some of those funds back, and appropriate those funds to something like this Blue Star Accounting for a comprehensive training, and then determine at that point, do we need ongoing oversight? For me, the outsourcing is less about doing the work of the treasurer and more about watching the work of the treasurer.
Yes,
And then-
exactly.
Regardless of who the treasurer is.
One, getting
And
the
making-
systems set up,
Right,
so that
get it
they're
set up and then
consistent
observe
and make
That-
sense,
One at a
and then
time, one
monitor.
at a time.
it. I could see, you know, I could see like, you know, if we could relocate some of the funds that are gone or were appropriated to RHR, Smith, to basically a different party to help train that might perform the training tasks more efficiently. And I could see it being even as little as a few hours a month, you know, 2 or 3 hours a month, you know, after every, or just before every warrant,
Okay,
or after, whenever is the right time to go through and confirm that everything is right.
So
Simply
what-
as like a cover your butt kind of thing, because it's very likely that we will almost never have a trained professional accountant as a treasurer in this town.
Right.
You know, so we're always gonna be, and it's not anybody's fault, it's just we're always gonna be a little,
so why don't we do this then? Why don't we put a number next to it of what we actually spend in, for Karen or Brenda or whoever to come in and do the training, that we appropriate and raise for, trio training. Cause obviously it's not, we're not getting the trio training, we're getting RHR Smith coming in here and doing whatever. But if we can get that number, and then we will be able to justify that we're not gonna use RHR Smith, and you're gonna take that monies and we're gonna go to this contractor to do what we want to do. And then we can, would that sound better? At least we have a number to go with, instead of just saying, well, we're gonna pay this and pay that. I think we need some monetary numbers next to it, so, the people.
Yeah.
So we're almost at the end of this fiscal year, and to be truthful, I believe, and I have the minutes over there, I think, for last, town meeting.
Okay,
And I feel that we've gone through that number. Between Evan and,
What we raised for training, you mean? And that-
Yes,
and-
that's in this town,
You know,
I
pardon me?
don't remember talking about it last month.
No, the town meeting warrant from last year.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I see.
So-
Okay, okay.
Okay, so I'm talking about going forward in June
Right, but
and put it before the voters and say, let's get a
But
number
Susan,
from this
Susan,
person.
we put it in front of the voters for that number. So let's,
Yes.
if we're gonna put it in front of the voters, we need to word that, this is what we paid RHR Smith for this training, it wasn't adequate. We'd like to take this same amount of money and put it towards blue whoever.
Right.
That's, we just need to come up with the verbiage and the numbers.
Right, so but
It'd be easier to discuss as well, I mean, that way we know what we're going for.
of course, but
Well-
what Charlie said is that it's going to be an upfront thing, because he's gonna look at the chart of accounts, he's going to try to do the
If
reconciliation.
you have an
for the-
upfront thing like we did in the last
Can
town
you
meeting,
reference,
we raised or appropriated trio training funds. So it was upfront, we knew, the townspeople
Right.
knew what we were gonna spend.
And we may be able to get
And I'm not even sure that.
a better estimate from him on, if he gets a little more information on what upfront. I don't think he has enough information to even, roughly understand, or come up with a number at this point.
yeah,
What I'm looking for, and every time I go to look at this, these warrants, I can never find what I'm looking for. In this case, it's the trio contract and the trio training, it was in one warrant.
Oh, is that what was the all?
This is last year's.
Oh, that's what you were referencing to, I got you.
There were minutes in here that did you?
he's
have
looking
them?
at,
Oh,
Okay.
Trio, okay, here we go. So, just so I can tell you, we raised, appropriate and expended, $8,800 for the trio contract. It was actually 11,000, okay? And then we raised and appropriated 5,000 for trio training, okay? I cannot tell you, and I do not have an idea, of how much money was spent training Evan. But the last thing that we did with RHR Smith, which was a non-attest agreement, the deal for that was they were gonna, so special services including FY '25 trio training, 8 hours, account reconciliation training, 8 hours, hourly financial reviews, 8 hours, estimated fee, $3,600. So far, we spent $1,200, and that was for when Brenda came over here.
yeah.
And then, here is, another one for 1,000, and that was for Karen
That was
coming over.
Karen coming over.
And so, the only thing that we, so far, we agreed to 3,600, that's above and beyond audit fees, this is training fees. And so far, we spent 1,200 plus 1,150, so 2,250, okay? And
That's above and beyond the 13?
this is just on training.
Okay.
With RHR Smith. Okay.
So okay, say that again?
So far this year, just on, since Susan and
Yeah.
Denise came on,
Yep.
we are on the hook for $2,250 to RHR Smith for training.
so,
Okay.
so there's a remaining balance of that 5,000 that was approved at the town meeting.
Right.
No, because I don't really know how much was spent on Evan. There was a lot of money spent on training Evan.
When we don't know that?
And I don't know what the figure is. I'd have to go in, you know what I mean,
Understood.
into Trio to get that line item to find out how much was spent. I can tell you that it was more than $5,000 when you look at training for Evan and for these two,
Really?
definitely.
So you think Evan received basically $3,000 or more of training? I mean, that's one of the challenges too, is at that point, over 50% of the training budget was spent on a treasurer that's no longer the treasurer.
So,
This is,
to be fair, I don't think it's just trio training, it is position training, and part of that is trio. I don't think it's just trio, it's
well,
not,
it says right in the book, Trio training. It's in the Trio amendment.
I
Well,
understand
Training,
that,
that could be read as training performed by trio, or,
right, reconciliation has really nothing to do with trio,
Right, but
really,
it-
it's,
But it would be, to me, that's part of Trio training.
I
Well-
mean, it's splitting hairs perhaps, but,
trio is the platform that you perform the activity on, but if you need training on the activity,
Yeah, right,
you know, that's like,
Right.
you know, the difference between being taught how to play baseball and how to groom a baseball field,
that's right.
you know?
This is my concern, long-term, and Dave, you kind of brought this up. We're looking for a short-term solution. We're moving towards that, and I think with some help from somebody other than R.H.R. Smith, we can probably get there. The reason that I am in favor of this is because this town has been on a financial roller coaster for 40 years. The people finally get trained, they finally figure out what they're doing, and they either get voted out or they quit. And then you're right back to square one again. It's been like this.
Always been.
We have never had long-term consistency in how we manage our finances. That's what my goal is, that it's gonna continue regardless of who is there, that it's a solid enough process, you know what I mean?
I'm on board with
So
you.
that's why.
I'm on board with you.
Yeah.
I just think that if we're gonna propose this, that we need to have some,
I agree.
numbers.
I
okay,
agree.
so we
I
need,
agree.
we need to know.
And I think this guy would, be able to provide that for us, but he needs to know a little more about what he's getting into.
That's fine.
You know what I mean, where we're at, you know what I mean, and,
Yeah.
you know, and where we are, and where we need to be, and how much time estimate he might.
Well,
Maybe
so then I go, then maybe I can propose a vote that we, entertain, this guy, Rule, whatever you said it was, and give him, the opportunity to look at us and give us a quote.
Yeah.
Continue the dialogue.
Okay,
I've got a suggestion before we motion and move on anything, but it might be wise to consider presenting to the town, having a fund that we maintain at a certain amount for if it's needed, say it's $5,000 at any given time, we have a fund that is for training of these financial positions, you know, the tax collector and the treasurer. Doesn't mean we have to use it every year, but in an occasion in which there's someone that has been voted in to fulfill one of those roles and needs a lot of education to perform the duties,
We have the resources.
we have the resources, and then effectively it's like, we have the $5,000 in a fund this year because we had a new person, we had to spend 4,000 of it, then we have to reappropriate the funds to get that back to 5,000. And if we don't use it,
Really good, because
I
that's
do
also
too.
gonna come into play if you have a treasurer that it does it year to year to year, and so you don't have to use those funds.
right,
But
that's what I
then
mean.
halfway through the year, they're gone.
Yep.
Now you've got to have
Yeah,
some funds to
Or
train
if-
that person, but you haven't had to use it for a while, so it's kind of just settled there.
yeah, and I don't think it should accumulate 5,000 every year.
No,
So
no, I
no,
don't
no,
think,
once
I
you've got
think
it,
you
it's
just maintain
maintain
it.
it, and then if there's
Yeah.
a year that we have to spend half of it,
Right.
then that following year, because we approved it in a prior town meeting,
Right,
we automatically propose reappropriating the funds to replenish it.
okay, so I'm gonna need two motions there. So before I go with the two motions.
Yep.
We gotta keep in mind, it's April.
Yep.
Okay, we have an annual meeting in June.
Yep.
So, this is stuff that we gotta start getting our
Yep. I'll pull the,
crosses our Ts, dot our Is, and get all our numbers together in a timely fashion, so we can get this together
Mhm.
for our annual meeting, if we
Yeah.
wanna push this, so.
I just had a question that, it seems to me that if you can hire this situation, you know?
Yep.
It seems like it would almost eventually pay for itself, because the audit must be a lot cheaper and a lot easier once.
It is.
Yes,
Yeah.
so we've spent how much money on audits that aren't even done yet?
I did.
I've run a business long enough to know that sometimes you just gotta cut your ties. When you aren't getting the service you need,
Yeah.
you just gotta cut your ties, cut your losses,
And
forget about it and go on
and the
in
payoff
another
will be
direction.
there, whether it's a year, 2, or 5, or
Right,
whatever.
exactly.
I agree wholeheartedly, and that's the good
It's the
discussion.
only consistency that you're going to have in a town of this size. That firm is going to be consistent.
See, and this
That's,
is
that's
where,
my long-term goal, look
Right.
at the demographics, how many, we're here, right? This is not a place where
well, this is
people
why we
come
started this
home, plant
conversation.
roots, raise their families, you know what I mean? It's like, it's a
Yeah.
recreation community, it's a resort community.
That's why we
basically.
started this conversation.
It's
And-
seasonal now, and it didn't used to be. Even when I first moved here, it was a real community that
Right.
didn't change too much.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
And-
it's
and-
now become a seasonal community.
And eventually, I think it'll trim our costs for the town people as well.
Yeah, I do too.
So let me make a motion, that we, engage in, and to get a quote with, what's his name?
It's called Blue Star Accounting and Advising.
Blue
His
Star
name's Mark
Accounting and
Roy.
Advising, the materials that they need to give us a quote, for as soon as possible. All in favor? Excuse me, all in favor?
No, somebody has
Oh,
to say.
second, I second.
Ally will second, I gotta step ahead of myself for a second. All in favor? Okay.
No, I think
and
that's definitely a really good direction, if nothing else.
I also make a motion that, we add to the annual meeting a request to appropriate, a fee of, a sum of $5,000 to put into aside for, future training to be replaced as needed or as an emergency.
Like a capital.
Yeah,
And it doesn't necessarily have to be limited, I don't know that we need to go too high, but if we either bump the number a little bit or not, it could just be a training fund for any elected or appointed position.
well, that's true.
Just
That's
that,
true.
that is only to be maintained and used if necessary. It may come a time where,
Above and beyond what we've.
I don't know, $5,000 to $10,000. I don't think if you're spending more than $10,000 a year in training, it means we've got some people,
So,
we've got a bunch of like
Okay, let me,
19-year-olds in
I'll
here.
cancel that motion. So the discussion though is,
Okay.
we will already be appropriating, funds for, say, trio training or whatever. If this is an addition, that this is the recommended that you just brought up a minute ago.
Well, so effectively,
Mm.
the thing with the trio, with this Blue Star Accounting will probably end up happening after our town meeting anyway, so whatever training comes from Blue Star Accounting or XYZ firm could then be pulled from this fund.
So why don't we say, instead of right now, we named it trio training for $5,000.
Yeah.
Why don't we put training
Training fund,
for?
And education.
And training and education for 10,000, and add that to and that way it's not limited to just trio.
is that,
Right.
yeah, that's what I'm getting at, broadening.
Okay,
Right,
so
cause that, right.
let's look, so that doesn't need a motion, and that will just,
For town accounting,
No,
for,
Just
for.
training.
training and education.
For
for-
any
Training and education.
elected
Town
or appointed,
officials,
for any
yeah.
elected or appointed
Mhm.
official.
So instead of, when we go to redo our book, instead of writing trio training, we're just gonna add, okay, so we don't need a motion for that. That's
But I'm adding it
something.
to this running list of warrants.
Are you sure we don't need a motion?
Okay, I'll make a
Do
motion.
we need a I don't know that we did a motion and vote for all these other warrants. This is just proposing a warrant for the town meeting.
Yeah,
Okay,
Mhm.
all right,
So I'm ready to
I'll
see if the
delete that
people
one.
will
Cause
approve.
cause you're gonna act on all those notes you have, that you've been taking all along.
Yeah,
we're gonna
That's
do
when
it
you
all.
would do your motion, I think
Yeah.
is. the-
Right, and then the people will make
Yeah,
the
and then,
motions
that's right.
so these are recommendations from us
Mhm.
to the people, and then people can say
Yeah.
yay or nay, or
I
They
just,
can
I
cut
just
it, they
think
can
that's a
increase it, they can do
wonderful
whatever they want.
idea. I think it's the first
do
thing
too.
that's made any sense in that I mean, when you think about it, that's really what Garnett does for the tax
Yeah.
part of the town.
So, and this is where I was
So it's really not
confused,
any different.
and I hate to beat this subject to death, but this is where I was so very confused until recently.
Yeah,
I wholeheartedly believed that R.H.R. Smith, whether it was Karen or Brenda, that was their intent.
oh, I
do
did
for us.
too, I did too.
I mean, they gave us that in my
Yes.
opinion. So here we are, now we find out that a year later,
Yeah.
after whatever thousands of dollars,
Mhm,
and so now we know why they're playing dodgeball.
mhm.
Okay,
And
I'm gonna call
anytime that
Karen.
they are avoiding you, You call your lawyer, he doesn't get back to you, you call your accountant,
There's a reason for
You
it.
know,
there's a reason for that.
I will call Karen and put a bug in her ear again about the reconciliation like I did last time, and I'm gonna, if I have to, I will be a little bit, I'll get another phone call to her, another email, because we need to get this done.
I think,
What if we just say, just finish the 22-23,
I'm
and
going
to.
we're gonna, and
And we're
stop
gonna-
the rest of it?
we're
We
gonna cut the
don't need
ties.
you for the rest,
Yeah,
because
we're gonna,
we aren't
and
getting.
I'll tell her we're gonna source elsewhere,
I think,
then she can figure it out.
just in their defense, I think this may be an evolving situation for them. I think they wanted to help and maybe like they're
You're being
realizing
very
like,
generous,
but
Charlie.
no, but I'm just saying they can't, they're offering
got
something
bigger-
that they can't
They got
logistically.
bigger fish to fry out
Right,
there,
and,
we're just
you know,
small,
and I
you know,
think,
we're not paying your bills, but
You
other
know,
accounts are.
but he's the one that mentioned, Mark Roy was the one that mentioned it's kind of a shady area when you're
Yeah.
actually
Makes sense.
designing
Well, we
financial
used to have an
systems
accounting firm
for
do
the
our
same
payroll.
organization that you're auditing.
We had an accounting firm that did our payroll, they did our accounting and they did our payroll, and that was a conflict, and they had to sell the payroll part of their company.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, do we have anything else on, the trio, or the alternative or outsourcing?
Just wanna clarify that when I'm putting in the list of potential warrants for this,
Okay,
is separate from the pursuit of a quote for Blue Star Accounting to look at
Yes.
Trio, okay, just wanna make sure. So what I
training,
wrote,
yes,
to see if the people will approve the raising of $10,000 to begin a training and education fund for the use of elected and appointed officials. This fund is to be maintained and replenished to $10,000 if depleted for training uses throughout the year.
Very good. Hey, just so you know, I've got one already underway, town report,
Okay,
so.
well,
you
that
can-
comes up later in the agenda, we'll, yeah.
Okay.
so we're gonna move on,
Yeah.
we beat that one up pretty good.
Yeah.
Remaining donation payments, that we are obligated because the town people had. My only question as I go through these is to the treasurer, we have enough funds to cover everything that we got listed on this paper?
We do, but I also printed the bank statement so that.
I
you
saw
can
the
see.
bank statement, and we'll get to that after, but I just wanna verbally, I know we got some checks coming in, right, is what I've been hearing, so,
I don't know how many, I don't,
well, these
No,
need to
how
be
much-
approved, I just wanna, okay,
yeah, so the thing, look at the next,
I saw it,
or
yeah,
the
I saw the
number
whole page,
5
yeah.
is what
All right.
I'm just like,
So, I say because the people have already, approved these, I'm gonna make a motion that we accept and pay A through J, which is the total of $10,200, which is the remaining of our donations.
We have, I mean, we're coming up on town meeting, we gotta get this done before the town
Yeah.
meeting, so,
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
All
That's
in
with the
favor?
next AP warrant, it'll be paid.
All in favor? And that'll clear that up, okay. CMP tax bill extension request, number 4, that'd be Justin.
Nope,
that-
that's what, that's,
That's
That's-
me.
Oh,
That's
that's
been
already
resolved.
resolved.
What they wanted was a request to
that's
submit their evaluation, not, an extension on paying their,
Oh,
second,
good.
second half of their.
Good, because.
No, because,
the world would
again,
be
like I
in
was
uproar.
trying to explain, the value of your property,
Yeah,
the deadline is April first.
yeah,
So they have not got their numbers.
yeah,
And they want another month to figure out and
Yeah.
submit to us the value
yeah.
of this power.
We're not ready to use that
No,
figure anyway.
last year they didn't send it till August and never asked for an extension.
Yeah.
So we're
I
good
mean,
on that.
you know, so we're good on that.
Okay, so number 5, transfer from general checking account to, A through E.
well,
Yeah, let's go with these one by
A
one.
through D, basically.
Yeah, let's go,
is-
I read D as I said that, let's go through them separately, because of the bottom. So A, the Moxie long range dam account, we need to transfer 30,000. I make a motion, we pay the transfer of 30,000,
is that, what's the reasoning for that? Is that,
that's because
That's
what the town
that's
people,
what we raised.
we raised.
So it goes out of the general
Gotcha.
fund into that specific.
these are all just things that were approved at the town meeting
Yes.
to move funds to certain, okay.
Right, these are separate bank accounts.
Yeah,
That's
You're
basically
not
what
paying
these
it
are.
out, you're just moving it.
Yeah.
around.
Right, yes.
So that's, I make a motion that we transfer the 30,000 to the long-range dam account.
I'll second that.
All in favor? The CFWF closure account, $25,000 repayment. Make a motion that
Is
we.
this our first or second year of those 25K payments?
I think it's the first.
It's the first, yeah, that just came up.
It is the
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Make a motion that we transfer the 25,000.
I'll second.
All in favor? Cemetery, C, 5,000. I'll make a motion, we transfer the 5,000 to the cemetery account.
Second.
All in favor? Annual road maintenance, 10,000. I'll make a motion, we transfer the 10,000 to the annual road maintenance account.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, E, budget items that
That's-
need to be set aside for intended purposes.
This is, do you wanna explain? These are not moving money to a separate account, that is a
No.
line item account, that's not
It's
what we're
supposed-
doing right now.
Right, so, but why I put it here is because we raised this money, we taxed our tax base
Mm,
for these funds.
Yeah.
And right now, they're just in the general checking account
And could be spent for anything, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
right.
what are you
They aren't-
proposing we do with it?
So this is where
in the budgeting,
having the budgeting module
to
in
keep
Trio.
track of it, to make sure that we always have the money
That's
that
it,
we,
yeah.
yeah.
So, okay.
Cause there's not an appropriate bank account to move it to.
Right,
No,
it's
yeah,
a
we
line
don't-
item in the trio account.
I get that, but that's where,
As long as it's not spent, then we're okay, you know,
I,
but it's not clean record keeping.
No. I
You know,
think-
effectively, if our bank account went below $28,400, then we'd be in.
so my point is, why is it in this, and what do you want, what are you trying to get out
All
of
I'm
this
trying to
conversation?
say is that we need to keep track of it, you know,
Okay,
And going forward, you would like some means to put this into some account that.
right, and I'm trying to show you how much money that we have appropriated to certain things.
Mhm.
We've chewed up our bank account right now,
Right,
and we have very little left from now until November.
no,
Well, I mean,
we have checks coming in right now, which is the second half of our taxes.
some,
Realistically, around this time of the year, this is when the bank account should be closer to whatever the zero is,
Right.
not zero, but
We should only have,
no, because we have to
Pay the September,
survive
don't
all the
we?
way till November.
yeah.
Right.
That's
That's when when
Right.
our tax bills go out.
So when the tax,
well, then, when they're due, I think ideally our bills would go out mid-September and
Yes.
they're due.
Okay, still,
by the
we
end
have
of
to
November.
float for several months on the
Right.
amount that so April 30th is when
so
our,
let's get back to the task.
I shouldn't have used the word zero, I just meant baseline.
right.
Let's get back to this, on our, you put this here, what do you want? I don't understand why it's here. You know what I mean, as we go down through this, right now it's transferred from general checking account 2, and it's in there. I understand that we need to identify that it's there, and I think we all understand, identify that it is there. I just don't understand what you're asking us today to do.
Like, what's the action item?
Yes.
That's what it is.
okay, it's
Thank you.
not an action item. To me, it is an awareness item that I want you guys to know that this right here.
This money's spoken for, we
So
understand that.
we've got $30,000 that we've budgeted for, that's a big chunk of money,
Mhm.
that really we don't have in our bank account, even though you have that, I printed out, you know, what our statements are. That somehow, I don't feel really good about going through the next 5 months without having, maybe our big taxpayers like CMP and Beirut and whatever, maybe they did their payments into, and we're gonna get more money by April 30th, but it is April 15th, and we don't have a huge bank account right now, and we're moving, we're
Yeah,
chewing up.
but this is, but the fact is item E is incongruous with the other rest of
I
them.
understand, I
We're
guess I'm
talking
just,
about moving money from a
okay,
general
then
account
maybe I
into
should-
another bank account, and this is talking about moving money from the general account into a line item, which is an internal trio process.
So
which is
maybe let's
different.
just look at letter E as a separate, article on the agenda then. It's something that needs to be addressed, but it's not relevant to this transfer paragraph.
right, I
Okay.
guess the
Which
whole,
is
the whole, that whole, starting from the very, number 5 is just to hopefully make you guys aware of, in my opinion,
Well, let's look at it real quick. So we've got $132,000 in the checking account. We're gonna move, what'd you determine it was?
it was,
Is the generator and
10,000.
reevaluation charges included in this 98.4?
Yes,
30, 40,
yes.
So that doesn't have to be
60,
included.
70.
Right,
So
That's
subtract,
70 plus 10, it's $80,200. Is what we just moved.
okay. So, right,
now, I think we understand what you're trying to do, Susan, but it's not congruous with everything else.
Right,
Well,
okay,
it's
We're making a
fair
motion
enough.
to move money from one account to another account. This is a heads up, look, we've dedicated money
That's
to
what
these
it
certain
is,
things, but
yes.
it's not moving money to another account.
Right.
There is
Then we're
no-
into the
right.
budget part of trio that we've never used, don't know how to use, and haven't
Right,
used.
right.
That's
So,
why we're waiting.
realistically,
So,
we got-
again, being transparent to our taxpayers, that we have to, we said, we taxed them and said, we're gonna spend whatever, the $15,000 on a generator, we weren't able to get a generator, we all know the reasons why, but nonetheless, we raised that money and that we shouldn't be spending it on trio training.
Right.
But we
Or
haven't,
some
we
other
haven't,
thing.
we haven't done anything wrong.
We're not.
We still have those funds, they're not in the
But
right
it's a
account.
piece of building a comprehensive budget process, we have to do that on multiple items, it's not
Right.
just that, it's multiple things that has to be
I
done.
just went through the minutes and just found things that we had raised money specifically for and that I wanted to highlight.
So that should come into your treasurer's report,
Okay,
That's true.
okay,
Yeah, we can
rather
talk
than
about
being
that.
rather than saying to, so,
It's not an
that
action
would be,
item.
that would be in your treasurer report, you could come up and say, hey, look, this is money we had set aside, for X, Y, and Z. The account showing this, but we gotta make sure that we understand that this is already spoken for, that leaves us with C.
Yeah.
Okay, and
that's
so-
where-
and the transfers too, or the transfers were okay?
No, the transfers
Those
were
are
fine, the transfers, we did a
items,
motion to
okay.
make sure that we could pay
Yeah,
it.
those are action
Okay,
items.
all right, that's
But just the
perfect.
concern, in reminder, I guess, I would bring that up in your treasurer report.
Should I delete this
Nope,
on, in?
No, we had
minutes?
discussions
You
on
could put a note on it that said table until treasurer's report for
Okay,
item E.
yeah,
or either way, yeah. I mean,
So yeah, we're sitting at, after these, it's still relevant, I think, to this conversation, so we just adding up, so $80,200, that puts our checking account in an effective balance of $52,080.
Yep.
And we have some of our larger tax bills have come in this month, pending, still in the city.
15 days, yeah.
Yeah, so it's,
I think that, next meeting we'll feel better about ourselves.
Yeah.
And, we've already know what we need per month roughly to get through, if we can make those, and this cleans up almost everything.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
we,
and
right?
now we're maintaining.
Okay, so, I think once we get all this done next month, you'll have a better idea of what the actual bank account is,
Mhm.
what we actually need per month roughly, plus or minus, to get through to November, and then also less this, what we just discussed. I think you'll find that we're gonna be okay. But let's talk about that next meeting about, once we have all those concrete numbers.
Okay,
I have to say, I forget what our commitment was, like $745,000, right? Somewhere around there. I can't believe that we spent that much. And I'm starting to wonder whether the budget
So-
that was developed last year
When we get,
is really a very accurate and good budget.
so when we get back to like the treasurer's statement, we'll talk more, cause, and we'll get out of this whack here. We still get a big check coming from, some reimbursement from the county for the salt.
Yep.
So, you know, that's gonna pay a bulk of what we paid out in salt. So that's gonna help replenish, our, you know, what we spent. And we're gonna talk about that too, cause I don't think we wanna carry the county next year. A small town like us to carry that.
No, they can pay up front.
Yeah,
Send us a
absolutely,
bill.
that's my, so, but that's a different subject, that's a different topic. So let's get through this, and then we can use that as an old business or new business, but, so, are we all good with number 5? Okay, number 6, let's go, Ergo's firewall contract.
Hi, folks.
How are you?
I, have a packet here, I gave everybody, an invoice. The bottom line, if you look at this, we have a firewall, contract with Ergos, which was API. The, 1-year renewal, $15.99, that's to keep the type of firewall that we have now, which is only gonna be good for 1 year. And then it expires because it's gonna be like outmoded. So then you can see the other payment option is, one-time payment, and that's for, 3 years. Let's see, description. So the 3 years, is 2,502. 1 year is 1,599. So it's, you know, we get 3 years of the upgraded firewall for 2,500, or 1 year of the old one for 15 or 16.
What did we, budget for, in our general,
Nothing, this would be probably coming out of plantation charge.
well, that's what I meant, in plantation charge, did we list that in there?
No, no,
I doubt it. It's not ever been particularly well itemized.
Okay,
The only reason I'm bringing it up, we should have this, is I don't know where we're at with the NECEC, and, you know, this is an IT issue.
right.
And, you know, we sign, I mean, obviously the 3-year one is a much better deal, but then we're locked into it for 3 years. And the 1-year one, you know, $1,600, it gives us a little more flexibility, but, you know, it's not a very good value compared to the 3-year one. So it's just kind of, and without knowing really where, we are with the NECEC IT, you know, piece, I
That's
didn't
not
wanna
even-
make a decision, we gotta
And
decide.
that, we may not even get that decision, cause that's gonna have to go in front of the people, so,
The NECEC thing,
yeah, what you think?
it may, I mean,
I've got some comments on that in old business,
Okay,
on the, you talk about the SEDC
Yeah.
program, yeah, I've got some news on that, yeah.
that's what I meant, that's the IT
It's
infrastructure
being paid
support.
for because of the NEC, so it's the same thing, right? I knew what you meant.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that, you know, we sign a contract for this, when we might have other options floating out there, you know, that's not good, we're locked into it, that's a
I
contract.
mean, unless they've come around and they've added Trio, and I don't know if that's gonna help us, so,
Is
in
it,
my opinion.
when does this decision need to be made by?
They're bugging me right now, they're calling me, they wanna put a ticket, they wanna do it today because, or part of it, because it's,
When does it expire
It
now?
expires today.
Oh, it does.
Well, that's when the quote expires.
so what if we just?
When does our firewall expire?
That's what I was curious, yeah. It may, if the firewall, expires, if the subscription expires after our town meeting, it might be wise to punt this until that month, till we have more information from SEDC.
but we, and pay the $1,600 for a year? you
Only,
mean?
well, I'm trying, what we wanna figure out is how good is our current subscription to this? How long is it good for?
How long is it
When
good
does it
for?
expire? If it expires at the end of June, then we've got some breathing room here.
I understand, yeah, you're asking, when does this?
Yeah.
I can follow up, I talked to.
I would not bank on the,
Excuse me.
I would not bank on something like this falling under the, SEDC program. And it doesn't sound like we're very eager about the SEDC program anyway, so I wouldn't associate this with that.
Okay.
So we really wanna know,
So-
when does it end? When was our current one end?
Yeah, see if we've got some breathing room on a decision here.
So we don't have any money.
Yeah, it's just, it's the end of the tax year, you know, it's like, we've gotta be careful with our funds. at the
I'll
moment.
talk with Adam tomorrow, he was very anxious to do it, but Susan was on the internet and we had to lose
I
internet
think we can't make
access.
a decision about anything until after we figure out what we have coming in by the end of the month.
Yeah.
What our bank account is anyways.
Yeah, even if we can push it till after April 30th, then we get a better idea.
Yeah.
If you could keep this quote alive until May 15th instead of April 15th.
So that doesn't have to be a motion, it's just a suggestion.
Okay, we good with that?
Yep.
December town meeting 25-26 warrant. Date of meeting, creating a file, contents, plantation charges.
So I went on MMA's website and I downloaded a bunch of information on what's required, formatting. I meant to bring it, but I didn't, it's at home. And, Charlie and I went through it last week when we were waiting for our camper to be installed. We just had nothing to do, so we were reading through it. And, some of the things like, our county tax, that's non-negotiable, so that doesn't need to be in there. As I mentioned earlier, I have already started the town warrant, and it's on Google Drive, so, you know, Justin, feel free to go in there and add to it, and, all I'm doing, the reason I started it is because we're coming up to it, and it's gonna take some time to put it together. It's just a starting point, I'm not trying to, you know, manage the whole thing.
Oh, no, we appreciate it, believe me,
I-
I've been biting my nails this last few weeks thinking about it.
So I just, it's basically a cut and paste from last year, I've changed a few dates, and deleted some of the, articles that aren't required. So that's, and I haven't gotten very far, but that's what I've done
It's a
so far.
start, anyway, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
think
start.
fantastic,
Let me
yeah.
just, you
Nice
use
work.
the county tax as an example. We don't need to put that in the book, is what you're saying?
Right, because it's, I mean, you might wanna, it will be in the treasurer's probably report that,
Okay.
that's required.
But we normally do put that in there as a.
Yes, we vote on it, and it's not a,
You can't
MMA's
vote on it. If the people said, no, we're not paying our county
Right.
taxes,
Good
don't
point.
work that
no,
way.
That
so,
makes sense.
so MMA
You know, it's like-
specifically says what you should have in it and what
You shouldn't have.
you shouldn't, and that was an example.
Of what you should.
So
There's some
I
other things.
apologize for not bringing it in, we kind of wrote all over it.
No, that's fine.
Maybe-
Could you scan it and email it to us so we can
Yes,
look
yeah,
at
I
it
can
as a
do
work in
that.
Yeah,
progress?
they're from the
I'll do
MMA,
that
it's just,
tomorrow
you know,
when I'm
what should
in
be
the
in there,
AM,
what shouldn't
yeah.
be, that kind of stuff.
I wouldn't get to it until next week anyways, my schedule
Okay,
is messed
yep.
up.
So, yes,
Don't
I
worry
will.
about it.
Yeah, I'd like to read that.
That's
And
good work.
some of their examples of articles were ones that are similar to our plantation charges, and then what they did was so raise whatever, I think we did 71,000 for plantation charges, and then you say A is for legal, and that's 10,000, and B is for utilities, and that's 30,000, you know what I'm saying, and so that you give the taxpayers a little bit of, and you can have a miscellaneous, you know, column too, but I'm just, cause right now, it's just all lumps into one big
Right,
lump sum, so that you, and you can kind of go back and look at the treasurer's report and maybe, you know, get some information as to where money goes.
You mean previous treasurer's reports?
The treasury report that's published in the town report.
For the previous, that's generally what, so if I wanna see roughly how much of this lump sum is being spent on certain things, then you go back to the previous year's report and assume it's gonna be similar.
Right,
I would love to see that for the sake of transparency, but it sounds like because of the challenges we've had with the budgetary module and trio, we'd probably have a hard time putting that together between now and the town meeting. To design those,
Perhaps.
to drill down that deep.
I do know, so in where the minutes are from last, year's town report, I have actual numbers I wrote in red, so you can see actual numbers, for expenses expenses for certain vendors that we use, and I added it to that set of minutes, just as a FYI to you guys.
Okay.
Again, I was just doing it as
I think
I was
that's-
waiting for this meeting.
That'll be helpful to review that, but I don't know if that's enough of a foundation to put a number in printed ink on
Yeah,
the town report to break down plantation charges into subcategories until we have a better grasp on,
right,
you know,
so
what they
maybe
really are.
a
Yeah.
goal, but, I mean, we talked about it
cause then we're
last year.
handcuffed, cause then if we're off by $5,000 between two categories, it's like, then we have to have a special town meeting to exceed,
Yeah,
because we're under by 5,000 in the utility subcategory and over by 5 on another category, you know, and
Yeah.
it still is all approved under plantation charge, we've kind of invited another procedural step if we do that.
okay,
I do think it would be great to strive for that over the next year, if we can,
Well, that's what
as we
we're looking
discussed.
to do, not right, yeah.
what's
I-
that?
I think that's the intent.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
think when you read the MMA article, you will find some clarity.
Okay, that'll
In
help,
that
yeah.
whole process
Okay.
too, cause I don't know that I know what you're saying, but I
Yeah.
don't know that you are then, pigeonholed into
Okay.
those specific numbers.
That's good,
I think it's just more information.
okay.
Anyway, it was just something that,
It could be presented in the town book as estimates,
right,
you
Yeah.
know, X amount of dollars for plantation charges, here's what we estimate based
Where
on
it's
previous
going.
years.
yeah,
Fuel oil,
Yeah.
propane,
Yeah.
whatever it comes.
Yeah, I like that, okay.
Office supplies.
We did jump over date of meeting, and that's what I'm most interested in figuring out.
I think it's supposed to be the second, well, last year it was a Wednesday, so.
Doesn't it have something to do with the assessors meeting? Like, isn't it the day before?
It's gotta be the day before, yeah, because we,
Something like that, I
cause
remember that.
then we
last
gotta sign the warrant after, is that what it was?
I remember it had something to do, it
Charlie?
was the Monday before the Tuesday assessor meeting. I never knew that, I just.
Yeah,
remember
we-
last year.
We had an assessors meeting, but it was a few days before we had it, I think. We
Okay.
didn't have it the next day, did we?
It at least just
I don't
makes,
recall.
it makes
I
sense,
wasn't- We weren't on board by that
Yeah.
time.
it makes sense that it's
Oh,
before
well,
the
actually,
assessors
yes,
meeting, I
we
don't
were
know if that's.
sworn in, so it was,
So the assessors
I
meeting
think-
is gonna
I
be
think
the
it was-
I think it was
seventeenth.
a Tuesday, and then we did our assessors on a Thursday or something.
I don't know, it's just gotta be before that assessors meeting though,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
sometime
Okay, so
before
the
June
assessors
17th.
meeting is the
The 17th.
17th. And I don't know if you guys have a preference, should it be Monday or or Wednesday,
Could we do the annual meeting on the 17th and then push our assessors meeting to the following? Or,
Or we could go to the week before, I don't know if anybody,
well, do we have time?
June 12th.
June 12th?
June 12th is a Thursday,
Yep.
okay?
And then our assessor meeting is on the following Tuesday, which is the 17th.
Look, make sure we have enough time to get everything done.
Well,
I know you wanna get a date, but make sure you have us ample time to go to the printer and
right,
get all our stuff done, so.
I think that's, between that week and the week after, I can't imagine it's too much of a deal breaker.
So
I'm trying to
our assessors
desperately
meeting is
try
on
to
the
remember.
17th of June.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we pick the June 17th as our annual, and then we can push our assessors to the 19th or,
Just to gain 4 more business days to get the work done, you mean?
well, not just to get the work done, you never know about the printer.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like,
yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where I think it was June 18th last year, wasn't it? So June
I
7th.
mean,
Could we do it, why don't we just push it right to why don't we just do it Monday, June 16th, and then,
I wouldn't be mad if we pushed it to the last week of June. but Both of us, look,
Yeah.
you chuckle, I mean,
yeah, I know, I get
there's a
it.
lot more
I-
to do here in the next 2 months. than
It's
there
like
is.
the principle of filling
Well, once
space,
we
if we
get
do
there,
it,
we
if we
haven't
do it
done
the
it,
last
we'll
week of
just
June,
Wing
we'll,
it?
Put it till September.
if we do it the last week of June, we'll still be scrambling in the 3rd week of June.
Okay.
You know, it's like,
I'm
you'll-
just this discussion,
we will fill the space provided, I think.
I'm a guy that makes sure that I have my ducks.
Yeah.
Well, I found, because I was involved with this, unfortunately, I was left on the outside looking in to
Yep.
a certain degree when this was done last year.
Yeah.
But I do know that when, Sandy and I did a lot of the work, we sat here and we ground it out, it's not that bad. It's one of those
Yeah.
things that the fear of doing it is actually worse than the reality.
Okay.
It's like, once you get doing it, it's like, it starts to flow, and it's really not too bad. My biggest concern is having accurate numbers of what we spent this year
We got
to
2
help
months.
us make up, right?
Yeah, I think
And you
It says- I
got
think-
vacations in between there.
it says a lot about the success of this team, real success, not like a show of success. I'm talking the real success of this team to rein things in and get things done. If we can not have to adjust dates to try to fit it in, if we can just
Okay.
perform, let's just perform the duty and
let's do the
get it done.
7th.
If we keep our assessors meeting the 17th and we get the town meeting in before that, that's a
Well,
huge
that
victory.
only gives you a day.
That's a huge victory.
If you do it on a Monday and then a Tuesday.
Any day before that, I'm just saying if,
Right, but that's,
I'm saying just not, I think that moving our assessors meeting later
I agree.
to fit more room for,
Well, not, I mean, not 2 days. I mean,
Yeah.
if you did the 17th on the annual and then the 19th of the assessors, you only moved it 2 days, only
Yeah.
to give room for the annual.
yeah,
You're still doing it the same week, we're still getting the same things done.
yeah. The 19th is technically a federal holiday, just so you know.
Oh, it is? Oh.
Oh, that's June
Yeah,
19th,
yeah.
Does that mean, yeah?
I don't know what that means. I don't know.
Does
I
that-
assume we could
Is
still
it
meet
federal
on the,
holidays, so the
Would you-
banks are closed that weekend?
I don't get federal holidays, so I get a couple, but
yeah,
I'm sure I'll be working that day. But that's up to you. I mean, we can do it the 16th and the 18th. If you don't wanna work on that Thursday night.
you mean 16th and 17th?
Or, well, I just think you want a day in between, that's all.
What has to happen between the town meeting? This will be my first town meeting behind the table
Well,
here,
this
so,
is the way I'm looking at it. We won't be out of here till 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock.
yeah,
I have to be to work at like 4:30 or 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And if I gotta do that 2 nights, 3 nights in a row, it's gonna be,
yeah.
you know,
I call that living the dream.
I call
Yeah.
that living the dream. Yeah. So selfishly speaking, I'd like to have a day in between to at least get, you know,
Yeah.
wrap my head around, because even our assessors meetings, they, like right tonight, it's,
Yeah,
They
I hear
go-
you, I hear you.
You know, I'm okay with, we have our assessors meeting on the 17th. I'm okay with having our town meeting on the 17th and move our assessors to the 19th. I'm okay with that. Otherwise, we're going into the week before, and I think we are kind of jamming there.
Okay.
So,
are you okay with?
Yeah, it stays the same week. For me, it was like, you know, wanting to show that this team's got our stuff together, because we do.
We do.
So
Yeah.
we're kind of like,
You're only
we're
talking
put-
about moving it 2 days.
that's right, if
Yeah.
it doesn't feel as bad, it just, I don't
Or
wanna
one
wanna
day.
preliminarily move stuff because we're worried about
That's
issues that
right.
may not
No,
arise.
we're substituting
Yeah,
our
I like that better,
assessors
I like
for,
that better, yeah.
for the annual,
Yeah.
in return, we're gonna meet a couple days after.
Yeah, I like that
Which
better.
would be the
My
19th.
perspective comes from the confidence that this team can get it done
Oh, I
by
agree
June
with
17th.
you.
I
Yeah.
agree
I'm
with you,
just-
I applaud you.
Yeah,
So
somebody,
get your-
Sandy and I,
I get your
Sandy and
concern.
I did it together last year.
somebody's gonna be the devil's advocate,
Yeah.
somebody's
80%
gonna
of
bring
it.
that up.
And
that's
I
all.
get your
June
concern,
helps
let's give us
out.
as much room as we can, so I get it, I like that, so we'll just
Yeah.
replace our assessors meeting with the town meeting, and then we'll have our assessors meeting 2 days later.
So 17th and 19th?
Yeah.
Okay. Good one.
That's a good thing to get sorted out right now.
All right, I make a motion, we accept the dates, the 17th as our annual, and the 19th, move our assessors to the 19th.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Okay, we'll move on. Number 8, discussion regarding legal services through Rudman and Winchell.
Yep, in your packets, you've got an engagement letter from Robin Winchell. Charlie and I met with the legal team, from Robin Winchell today, so, and I say that on purpose because it's, we will have a team of attorneys at our disposal, in this case, or should we engage them. My personal notes are back here. So, it's 4 different attorneys. Rudman and Winchell kind of specializes in municipal law. They've got a team that is kind of heavy-handed when it comes to their training. Well, they're just handwritten notes anyway. I just wanted to give names, but basically, one of the attorneys is focused on, you know, municipal law as it relates to real estate. One is One is focused on municipal laws as it relates to employment practices. One is focused on LUPC and land use issues. And then the kind of lead of the team is just well-versed in all of it. There's no retainer, so it's much like we've had in the past. It's a pretty heavily discounted rate. I wanna say $3.25 an hour or something like that.
I thought it was
$2.65.
is what I recall.
$2.95 for partners, $2.60 for
There it is.
associates.
Yep. And it sounds like a lot of the stuff that we will need, regularly is stuff that could be handled by associates and paralegals for the most part.
Yeah, for less.
Yeah. They're out of Bangor, not right down the road, but, nothing right down the road, yeah, and, a lot of experience. They come with a lot of high regard and, very willing to come out here either in person or via Zoom call if ever necessary, of course. And, have experience actually, what did he say, that they've represented 28 different plantations
How'd
in
the
the
call
state.
go?
Huh?
How'd the call go?
Great.
Good.
Yeah, it did. They were super informative and open to questions, and it was a brief call. We knew it would be. It was more of just like a meet and greet and
Yeah.
put some faces to names. Explain some of the things upcoming on the real estate side, on the land use side that might be, coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, might require that
Okay.
assistance.
Talked about, liability issues with the gym and, what might come of that, if we're gonna expand the usage of the gym, and it all seemed like it was well within their wheelhouse.
A question that will come up from the public, I think, will be, comparatively speaking to, Eaton and Peabody, how are they comparatively, for the rates? I think that'll be something that should be discussed before we,
Well, I'd have to take a look at one of, Ian Peabody's old invoices.
Yeah.
But, Tim Woodcock charged $200 an hour. But that was what, I don't know if that's what he's charging right now. I did, as we agreed to engage him for the, gym release, which he also sent me an email today, which I'll forward to you guys too, about all that.
okay,
But I do not recall, so I can't say that that's what he's charging right now. I did not discuss it. Probably I should have,
So,
but it's
basically-
always been 200 an hour. But when I look at it, it almost always was him doing the work. I don't recall very often being charged for paralegal work. And I do remember this guy named Garish, who was a retired town manager that they had on staff there to help with town stuff. And he charged a different fee from what Tim did. But he seemed to have done all the work himself. That's my.
I think before we, I think we, just for the town people's sake, that we need to take a good look at what the difference in pricing would be, before we pull the trigger. And I'm all for it, don't get me wrong, because I think we need to go in a different direction, and the confidence level's missing, but just, the question's gonna come up, and I just want to make sure that we're,
What do you think is, between now and the town meeting, or between now
I
and
don't
a
think we have
decision
to
on
run it
this?
through the publics.
Right, I guess
Right,
between now and a decision on this, would we be looking at other firms? Cause we've been through, 4 firms or something, and only a couple of them,
Have replied.
yeah.
Yep.
So,
Well, I don't, have we got any numbers from anybody else?
no.
Okay. I think it'd be only fair that we have at least,
I think it's so hard though,
Yep.
You gotta compare experience, I mean,
Well,
you
is
might get a cheap rate, but it might not be.
I understand that, but
Person you want
this is
representing.
only the discussion part of it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So this will be conversation that will come up,
Yeah.
and we need to have, as a group, an understanding of why and how much, and what we're going, and why we're doing this,
Yeah.
so.
yeah, I think, in the near future, we're gonna be happy that we have high quality legal representation.
Okay.
So it's sort of like get what you pay for kind of thing.
I understand.
And it seems like,
Yeah.
from my recent experience the past few years, this seems, better than rates that
Oh, I
I'm
think it's.
generally paying. Yeah, it's,
I
I think we'll find that this is pretty
I feel pretty strongly that in this regard, that the town needs a fresh start with legal representation.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't
A
think
fresh
it's
start
suggested
here,
staying,
just,
yeah.
I kind of
It's not
feel.
just, not just here, but the whole town needs a fresh start.
That's what I'm- that's what I'm
100%,
saying.
and that's why I think we all initiated this.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it at that.
So is the implication that you want me to keep shopping around for a couple more?
No, that's not the
Okay.
implication. There
Get a few
there
more
was a
numbers.
discussion,
Yeah,
and it was just questions that the public's gonna ask.
Yeah.
And the public, so I'm asking just to make sure that we're good with it solidly for the people.
You're being a devil's advocate.
I have to.
yeah, it's good. I feel good about this. I think the rates are pretty reasonable, given what the going rate right now is for attorneys.
So so with that said, what are we looking for today?
I was hopeful that we could make a vote that we could engage Rudman and Winchell, but I'm open to the
So
idea
there's
of
no
tabling.
retainer,
No retainer,
so we're just gonna engage and put them as gonna be our new.
attorney of record.
team.
I'm totally open to tabling it though, if we wanna wait till next month, and I can try to get two more physical quotes like this, and, but, yeah,
I had a really good
everyone else
feel
said we're not
talking
taking
with
on.
that team today.
Did you?
I think the rates are reasonable, and I think that it's really important, not just for us, but really for the citizens of this town, for there to be kind of a break from,
Yeah.
the past. I don't wanna get too, I just think it's time.
Yeah.
It would be advantageous that we started fresh in this particular regard of our business, that's all. And I don't wanna get into why I feel that way. That's just how.
I know it doesn't seem like much, but in their world where, you know, things are built in 6-minute increments. The entire team got on that call for almost a half an hour. For what is largely, we all left there, it was really comforting for, you know, Charlie and I, but when they hung up the call, they probably thought that could have been an email kind of a meeting, you know? And they did, we had, you know, 4 full-fledged attorneys on a video call for a half an hour.
Understood.
And then, you know,
So,
it's not uncommon to get a free meeting, but that's a pretty robust
do you
first free
need
meeting.
anything besides your signature?
Do I need, what's that?
Anything else besides your signature, for the engagement?
I don't know
I see you have it
if,
written.
yeah, my name's on it, that was a question that I had, I'm happy to be the signer on it, if you prefer that you be the signer on it.
No, not at all.
Okay,
No, I'm happy with you doing it.
or I can
think
have them resend it with all 3 of us, or, that is a question I had before we went
No,
ahead.
as long as we take a vote, giving you permission
Yeah.
to represent, that you're signing it as a representative of the majority of the board.
Okay,
Okay, I make a motion that Justin takes signs the engagement for, Redmond and Winchell, and put them on, as our legal team.
I second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Good work.
Very good. All right, number 9, tax collector's report. I'll show you a picture, you won't like it. So she's not here, she's on vacation. I don't think she left anything. I know she said there was some checks come in, she made a deposit before she left, like 28,000 or something to that effect, and you've mentioned there's a bunch of checks coming in. so
yeah, there's been a pretty steady flow of checks coming through the tax collector's mailbox.
we'll
One of
have
them's
to,
in a big package that says Adam Grid on it, so hopefully that's
right,
hopefully that's not a request for,
an extension.
extension.
They can have an extension, it's just 8.5
Exactly.
cents on May 1st. I don't care when they pay it.
So with that being said, we'll,
I guess I care, but I'm just saying.
oh yeah, they'll pay.
I
Well,
just wrote tax collector not present.
Not present yet. We'll move on to the treasurer's report.
Okay. So I think that we've already discussed most of what, you know, what occurred this past month in terms of Karen and, our attempt to do the reconciliation. She was here, for the majority of the day. She, I think, showed up here at 9 and left at 3. And we did not even get through, we might have gotten through like 4 months, and we had lots of holes in those months. And
Very
that was the
disappointing.
fiscal year 22-23, so, we just didn't complete it, and I have not heard from her since then. So that's where the reconciliation is. And then now I'll move these budgeted items that need to be set aside for the, you know, why we, or what we raised and appropriated them for the generator and the reevaluation charges. Again, I think what one of you guys said, when we get to the end of this month, maybe we'll have a better feel for
I make that.
where we are fiscally, so, maybe I'll feel a little bit better, about where we are, but, even though this is the end of our fiscal year, we still have to, we aren't
Got
sending.
3 months until we get more money.
Exactly, so I feel like I'd like to see well over $100,000 going into those 3 months.
Well, let's have a better accurate number like we discussed, what we.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I was gonna ask what that number was for you, so to get to November, you'd like to see over $100,000 after all the tax bills come in,
Yeah,
or tax
and,
checks come in.
and all these transfers and whatever we have set aside money for,
So effectively, we're sitting at about half that, $52,000 now, so.
Yeah.
If we can accrue
Not
fifty
really.
to $75,000 more between now and,
I'd feel better, but you don't wanna go down to nothing.
I agree, yeah, I know.
So,
Yeah.
you know, but I think that the, you know, the salt charges are gonna, you know, I didn't know that we get reimbursed from, so that's huge. Plus we have, CMP/NECEC that is going to, be paying their taxes. I know that they did it in 2 increments, so.
Okay.
So we probably then will be in
Okay.
decent shape.
At the end of this
I'm
month.
not gonna say
just-
great shape, but decent shape.
At the end of this month, I'm sure we'll be just about done with salt. I've spoke with Andy, he's gonna do a detailed list, whether we're up a load or down a load, or where we stand, and I'll make sure that that's clean at the sand shed, and then we'll know, from there, and then we can bill the county.
I put that number in where those minutes are.
Yeah.
We aren't that far from what we raised. I was surprised, I thought
It
the amount of bills that I am, it seems like every warrant I've got, you
So,
know,
well,
three
that time of year, yeah.
sand and salt
Town meeting
for
minutes here.
several $1,000s, and I'm,
Get 'em marked
yeah.
up.
So, anyway,
So, okay, so is that your treasurer's report then?
that's it, yeah.
Okay, I make a motion, we accept the treasurer's report,
Second.
all in favor? All right, clerk's report.
Okay, clerk's report, I don't know which one to put this under, maybe it should have been the treasurer, because, when Karen was here, tax collector, she did mention that as a BMV agent, I'm supposed to be deputized as the tax collector, deputy tax collector, in order to accept, you know, the, payments for BMV.
Did we get any
Excise
clarification
tax.
from, MMA on that?
I didn't, but Denise came in here the next day or whatever, and she deputized me, she
Oh,
was
okay,
here
so
anyway,
I
so
guess
we
No
just,
argument then.
yeah, we went through it.
Okay.
I
You took care of it then?
That's right, I took a class for the next level up, so now I can do new, registrations, and this is the form that they gave me, you guys have to sign it if you indeed want us to, be a new registration town. So as you probably all have heard, these new license plates are all unrolling, we've got a bunch of them in the vault, that we've accepted, and we'll be trading in, as people register their vehicles, so.
Just going
Yep.
around.
Yep, so, and then I was going to ask whether or not, there's a few supply items that I'd like. I'm not really that, the AAA batteries is from Tabitha, the other two I'd like, but whatever, one is a vacuum cleaner, a small handheld, so
The
the
flies.
flies
Oh, gosh,
in
yeah.
all over the, you know,
So when it comes to that type of, stuff, if you send an email out to us, initial it,
Accept
sign,
it, and
accept
okay.
it in an email if you just need to make supplies.
Okay,
Supplies is something that we all know that we need,
okay.
no matter, so
And
we'll
we
look
don't
at
have to
it.
do it during the meeting.
And if we have a question, we'll question
Yeah.
why you need
Sounds good.
AAA batteries, but I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, supplies are, you're not asking unless you need it for something.
No.
Right.
Is the small vacuum something for Tabitha and her duties, or something to have for us to use in between?
For me,
Okay, so
for
then
me, when I'm in here,
I've got one
doing
that can-
BMV and the
Oh, they're
windowsill
awesome.
is just,
I don't know if you've got one lined up already, but the one that Celeste and I bought for our house is pretty fantastic. I can
Perfect.
send you
I
a link.
just have
that sounds awesome.
like a, I think it's a joy devil thing, but it's great. It has
Yeah.
it's bagless, you take the thing off and dump it,
yeah.
and that, I leave it in my bedroom because I use
Yeah.
it every day in there.
Yeah,
They're
we
just
just
awful.
leave it in.
I've been-
Okay.
Japanese beetles.
I make a motion that we accept the clerk's report.
Second,
All in favor? All right,
Done.
this, acceptance of the 3/18/25 assessors meeting minutes and 4/15/25 special assessors meeting.
I've read them. I make a motion, or did you just make a motion?
I haven't yet, I just.
I'll make the motion to accept it,
I second.
both. You got a motion to accept
All
both
in
of those?
favor?
All in favor?
All right. We'll move on to old business. SEDC funding update.
Yeah, just, not a formal update, but I've been in close communication with Christian Savage on a handful of fronts, and one of them, we talk enough so that I bring this up every once in a while. They've heard the feedback, they're revamping the program over the next couple months. Some of the towns, the larger towns, have taken them up on that program they presented. There's gonna be funds left over because many did not, so they're determining what those funds are and how to appropriate them, probably per town size, so I wouldn't expect a big lump sum, but it sounds more and more like they're gonna be presenting us with a lump sum of money to be used toward a more broad, sense of the term IT needs. So, I don't wanna get everybody's hopes up, but it sounds like it may be something we could use for Trio modules, for anything that has to do with our IT.
Computer.
Yeah.
Firewall.
Yeah, so I don't have, basically their timeline is they're revamping what they have left after they subtract out the towns that have taken advantage of the program as presented, and then figuring out how they're gonna,
Help the little guy out.
how they're gonna appropriate the towns accordingly, the funds to the towns that didn't take advantage of that. And they're hoping to be here at our May meeting to present that,
Awesome.
that changed program,
Excellent.
so. Hopefully in a month we'll find out.
Okay, great. Any new business?
Oh, and are we done with old business?
We haven't got to old business. Oh, no,
That was
I
old
guess-
business, yeah.
No, we're not done with old business. Do we have any other old business? I'm sorry, that was the only one written.
I just have a question,
Sure.
and I think it comes under this, it's in regard to the buildings up at Moxie.
Yep.
Well, I've been thinking about this, do we have insurance on those buildings?
The
Yes.
insurance, yes, we have insurance on Ida's, those three buildings, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. And do we have like no trespassing signs around them? or-
We do not.
I mean, what's our, well, this is a good
Well, actually,
question.
there is one.
There's
What's
one
our,
private property, I think
yeah.
it says.
What's our liability if somebody goes in there and falls through the floor or whatever? Who knows? Without any, no trespassing signs?
Well, there are locks. They are all locked up,
Okay,
Pretty securely, yeah.
and
Yeah.
very securely.
all right, so they're probably gonna see.
Yeah. We did an inspection, a couple weeks ago, so,
Okay.
Yep.
Good, all right. I was just thinking about that.
yeah,
No, appreciate it.
no, absolutely.
It might not hurt putting up a couple of no trespassing.
No, I was just thinking that
signs, you know,
myself. We
I mean,
really should put-
cops,
Yeah.
so I'm not gonna go wrong with it, so.
Yeah. I might have a couple that work. If I do, I'll stop and slap them on there on the way by. It won't be tomorrow morning at 4, but.
We just don't wanna have to engage our new attorneys
Yeah.
immediately.
No, 100%.
No,
Hey Dave, on that line, is that the old business, the property there, or is that new business and the property to talk about?
So what are you specifically, what are you asking?
Well, we asked about, leasing the property and then,
You didn't ask about leasing it, you asked about purchasing it.
well, we did leasing or purchasing,
Yep.
or anything like that. And I understand that there's gonna be a lot of discussion over it. And I talked to Charlie a little bit, and I think it's great that you're gonna do a public thing and do the figure out what all the options are. I just want you guys to know that if one of those options is, to sell it as is, Isabel and I both have a large project experience.
Yep.
So we know how to mitigate hazardous materials like asbestos.
Yep.
And any of the mold issues and things like that.
Yep.
So we would be interested, in taking it as is, if that's one of the options you guys wanna
Yep.
do.
So, what we are right now, we started with, you started this whole thing, and you made me do a lot of work.
Sorry about that.
You wouldn't believe the can of worms over.
Although there's a lot of can of worms, and I'll tell you just the highlights of it. Dealing with the state assessors, department is very difficult. It's like pushing noodles. Just trying to figure out what we could and what we couldn't do and how to go about it. And it was more because of, it's on the dams, you know, because of the dams right there, and it was bought with the dams funds, with the maintenance funds. And then it turned into, from the state assessors, it turned into, after they started digging, because the lot numbers don't match up. We have, they call it God's country as a subdivision. And lot 1A and lot 6 on their tax map was the same, but it wasn't on ours. So once they got that all cleared up, as they dug into it, they found that, well, CMP's been paying the property tax on it since they first signed over, and CMP was pretty upset about it. And so now they can only go back, so now the town's liable for the back taxes for 3 years, which was supposed to be going, that the leaser was supposed to pay the taxes. So we haven't got that bill yet that I'm aware of. And when we do, we'll look at it, and I don't know if we'll have to discuss it, see what the town or the board wants to do, whether we go back after and try to give whoever was leasing it to pay it, or we eat it. I'm not sure how it's gonna happen.
Mhm.
So this has been an ongoing issue. And in the meantime, the previous owner of the building sent an email inquiring about, leasing one of the smaller buildings. So since that time, we did an inspection with the local contractor, Glenn, and we went and looked at all the buildings and found them to be uninhabitable at the moment, and for leasing. So we will not be leasing them, to occupy at this moment. The future of them is, in discussion with the board and the people, and it hasn't got to the people yet. And I don't wanna start rumors, so, we'll have to leave that until we get to the town meeting. And it will come up in the town meeting and let the people, make their decision and have their discussions on what they would like to do with those 6 lots.
Fair enough.
The 1A lot is particularly problematic because of its association with the dam structure itself. And, you know, like you go down to that next camp, I mean, it's part of, I guess, an earth impoundment, but that's on an island that was originally there. I mean, there's not concrete in front of it and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that kind of complicates that particular lot and those particular buildings because of its proximity to the actual structure itself. And I don't know what that means,
Yeah.
but
So you
that's
had to
the
work-
area.
And you had to do work on the dam, you would need to.
Yeah, I'm
have
just
that
saying is, you know,
already.
that's an area that
Right.
probably would require legal
Yeah,
representation.
right away.
That would be a right
away.
But also, there's another piece to that, is if that, also that building, is been, and I don't know, cause we haven't pursued it, but from my understanding, it's, the Maine Historical Society has a flag on that building, so.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so, you know, if anything were to proceed in the direction of selling that property, it will likely come with,
Stipulations.
the attention of the Maine Historical Society. They'll be involved.
Well, we just want you guys to know that we're still interested.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, I appreciate it,
I
and
appreciate that.
we knew, and we're doing our due diligence, but I'll be honest with you, it's like pushing a noodle sometimes. And we can't do anything as a board until the people make their decision on what direction they want to go in, and then once they make their decision what they're going to do with that, then we'll follow through with it.
Is there any interest in, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen to inform the people. Is there any interest in having a public hearing prior to town meeting?
We thought about that,
Just an informational one, or a letter with information or something?
and that's why I didn't want to start any rumors.
Well, exactly,
But yes, we're talking about that.
yeah, cause I think otherwise you're gonna have an awful long town
That's-
meeting.
We're on camera, you're letting the cat out of the bag.
I'm sorry. You can erase that part.
I think what our goal is right now is to try to determine what we can do legally with the property.
Right,
And then try to define that the best we can for the voters, to try to give the voters some
I see.
options about
Before we
A,
make it
B,
public.
C, or
That's
D.
good.
That's
You know
part
what
of
I
the
mean?
lawyer people to,
good,
And
well, that's
We
good.
wanna be able to present feasible options to the town. We could
That's
we could
right.
dream up options
Oh, yeah,
and
but
then
that's not,
spend the
that's
next
not
12
productive.
months seeing if
No,
75% of those options are even legally feasible.
that's right,
I
good,
think,
If we have 3 or 4 options for that property that we can say we've done the groundwork, all 3 of these options are legally feasible,
good,
this is what it would take to do it, this is the potential revenue from
well,
it, this
that's
is.
wonderful.
I frankly just, cause we're looking at June and all that, I think it might be a reach to be able to define clearly what we can and can't do with
well,
that
we may have a
property.
direction, at least we can let people know that we will be having a separate town
Well,
meeting.
that's,
But-
that's
Right,
good.
so
Yeah,
I'm
that's
saying we
good.
may have to do something in July or August.
But we're
you know what I
trying.
mean,
Good.
We're
that's
trying,
really
that's
good.
To decide that we may not have all our
Right.
information available at that point in time,
Yeah.
because it's, it's
Oh,
just
that's
been.
good,
It's,
yeah.
and trying to get all this information together and getting the right people to look and, prepare is very, there's a lot to it.
Well, you've been doing a lot already, but that's.
Sorry we opened up that can on you, but I'm sure
Okay.
you'll feel good when it's all behind you.
Yeah, I mean, it was,
Don't apologize.
yes,
Trust
it's
me.
easy for me to say because he's been taking the lead on it, but it was, it's a good thing that we've started to look
Oh,
into
no,
this because it
100%.
was festering, and so it was good to have.
Right.
It was easier because somebody started the ball rolling, and that was,
Right.
We had a
right.
reason to do it.
we
It
had,
was
Right,
just-
right.
we had an obligation.
An obligation.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah,
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, so is there any more old business that would like to be discussed? All right, we'll move on to new business. Any new business? I have one thing, and just for everybody's awareness, I've had probably 4 either emails or text messages or people asking about Moxie Lake. When's it gonna be full? I refer them to Mother Nature. We closed the gates, the 27th, which was 3 days prior to, earlier than last year. There has been no runoff, not sure, we haven't had no rains. We're getting some now, it is starting to come up, we're starting to get some runoff, but it was 12 degrees last week. One night, 12 degrees the week before, so I marked Monday and Tuesday was the first 2 consecutive days that was above freezing. Things will start to run off now and fill. So just for everybody's know that the gates are closed and the water is coming up. The ice is softening. It won't be early, but it'll be out on time this year. The typical last week, April-ish. So,
that's good.
There's enough running down through there, you can't just shut the stream off.
No,
I mean, it's
you
cracked
have
a
to
little
keep-
bit, Cause you
yeah.
have to keep a flow going down through
Right,
there. It's-
sure.
Did you say you closed the gates on the 27th?
I did, yeah, Leon and I, yeah.
Nice.
So that's all I got for new business. Anybody else before I adjourn?
Remarkably, I don't.
Motion to adjourn,
Second.
all in favor?
1939.
All right.
19?
Oh, now I have.
Oh, 21. Look up.
Good night, guys.
It's 19.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see
See
you.
ya.
That's not too bad, that's a little over an hour and a half. Not bad.
That is amazing,
Couple
Shelley,
seconds.
as much as we had to go through.
Yeah.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
That's, well, you guys have done so much.
And we appreciate the conversation